Hi, my name is Mike Halpin, State Senator for the 36th District, and I'm here with Steve Hess, farmer down in Bushnell, Illinois, and we're talking about my bill, Senate Bill 2842, which would ban eminent domain when it comes to CO2 pipelines. It's an important issue here in the region. Make sure that our farmers have the negotiating power and the choice to decide what happens with their land. And Steve's got some firsthand experience that we're looking forward to hearing from. Steve, thanks for coming and talking to me today about my Senate Bill 2842. It would ban eminent domain use when it comes to carbon CO2 pipeline projects. And if you could tell me a little bit about what your interest is in this and how it affects you as a landowner here in Illinois.
So eminent domain for CO2 pipelines is a subject that's very near and dear to my heart. I'll never forget 4 years ago when Navigator had their proposed pipeline coming from Iowa into Illinois, and there was a public meeting in Macomb, and they laid the maps out, and it went through 6 tracts of farmland that my family farms. And we've been on my family farm. I live on my wife's family farm. It's been homesteaded since 1869. And so 6 tracts of farmland. And I will never forget standing in my barnyard, the first visit I had from a land agent for Navigator. And I said, well, your offer is kind of low. I said, is there any negotiating room? And he says, well, no. He says, if you don't like it and we get approved by the ICC, we'll just use eminent domain.
Yeah.
And that really struck a raw nerve with me. The fact that that's what my property rights are in the state of Illinois for a pipeline project for a private company like this.
So how does that keep you from getting a fair deal for that type of project when you're having to give up the use of some of your land?
As long as a pipeline company has the right to use eminent domain, I have no power whatsoever to negotiate. And it's basically whatever they say, whatever their offer is all they're going to offer. And I can understand eminent domain working for public utility projects, for new roads that we need and things like that, but for a private pipeline project to store CO2 and collect government tax credits, which is what this is, I don't think it's right. And if I'm going to have the ability to be able to negotiate and get a fair price, I mean, my farmers, we're negotiating a solar contract right now. We've been approached by wind companies. If I'm going to have the ability to negotiate, I have to have the freedom to be able to say no.
Right.
And then let's talk and get a better offer. And that is not possible.
Yeah. And there are probably farmers out there that are not necessarily opposed to having it come through. They've done the research, they've weighed the cost and benefits, but it's that negotiation, the lack of choice that makes the difference.
Right, and then there's also the land issues. I mean, almost every tract of farmland that they wanted to come through is a pattern tiled field. We spent thousands of dollars putting in pattern tile to make our farmland as productive as possible. And when they come through and cut those tiles, every tract of farmland that they were going to go through was at a diagonal, which raised big red flags to me about what that's going to do to my drainage system. And then we asked about repairs, and they said, well, find somebody that can repair them. They really didn't have a plan. So that was another concern. Also, we had a natural gas pipeline go through our farm 55 years ago. And I know that when you disturb soil, when you dig down deep, when you compact subsoil, that effect is there forever. We can still see the effects of this natural gas pipeline that was put in 55 years ago across one of our farm fields. So I'm concerned about what it does to the land. We're talking about, farmland that's our major asset, and to think that they were going to come in and take away from the value of that, yeah. And I would have no say about what they're going to pay for it.
Other than that value, are there other risks that you've seen with either safety or environmental concerns?
I'm super concerned about safety. I've read the gassing of Setarcia and about what happened when a CO2 pipeline down in Mississippi broke, and the cloud moved 1.5 miles to the town of Setarcia, Mississippi, and people were passing out, vehicles were stalling out, and nobody knew what was going on because it's an odorless, colorless gas. And so one of the pipeline proposed routes was within 0.5 mile of my son's house. So I'm very concerned about pipeline routing. I think, you have no ability to negotiate pipeline routing as long as they have eminent domain authority. They can go through whatever tract of farmland they want to. And so I'm super concerned about especially population centers, if they're going within, like let's say a mile or two of a town. There's all kinds of health risk.
And we're talking mainly about the real big companies, these nationwide companies that try to come through. They don't know the local people, they don't know who they're dealing with. I guess, are you concerned about those efforts continuing? I know some of that has died down in the past year, but are you worried that they're going to come back with these demands again?
Well, yeah, and I see, Summit is struggling. I mean, they've been shut off from going through South Dakota because South Dakota has a limited eminent domain. Summit's talking about redefining their pipeline and rerouting the project too. And I know that there are still sequestration sites over in Christian and Montgomery County on the eastern side of the state that are potential places for CO2 pipelines to go. And so I don't think the dust is settled at all here. I think there's a lot of give and take. There's a lot of strategic planning going on right now that big companies aren't going to make small guys like me aware of. But I think they're still playing because the end game here is to collect the tax credits from 45Q, and there are billions of dollars involved.
Yeah.
And I don't see any of that filtering back to the farmer. That's what concerns me. Is I want to help ethanol. I want to help ethanol plants. And if carbon sequestration is good for the atmosphere, which we could talk about that too. But I want my ethanol plant to survive. I want them to be profitable, but I want them to share some of that money with me if I'm going to have a part of the project.
And you want to have that control, or at least a little bit more control in what happens on your land.
Exactly.
And I know you're not alone. What are your friends, neighbors, other farmers in your region thinking about this?
Well, I mean, they're opposed to it. I mean, when the Navigator pipeline was proposed through McDonough County, there were 110 parcels of farmland that they needed to go through. And after a year and a half of contacting farmers, they had 8 tracts of farmland signed up. So that tells me there's a lot of people that don't think this is a good idea, or they want to hold out for a better pay. I mean, everybody has. It's just like negotiating with a solar company or a wind farm company. Everybody has a price that they're willing to take.
Sure.
But unless we can negotiate and make that price worth our while, we really don't want to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I don't think I have any other questions for you, but we're going to continue to move this bill as far as we can. We've got a great bipartisan coalition of senators that have stepped up behind it, and look forward to trying to get it accomplished.
Well, and we really appreciate your part of this battle, Mike. I mean, we've got 25 co-sponsors signed on now too, and you have been a strong proponent of this thing ever since you introduced it. And we'd just like to see property rights in Illinois defended. And we appreciate you taking up our flag and leading this charge.
Yeah, we'll do it together. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this video. Please like and subscribe to keep up to date with news from the caucus. For more information on what I'm working on, please follow me on social media using the links in the description below.